Well, Chris Isaac's in the studio. Chris Isaac. I didn't say Isaacs.
Good enough, close enough. I never correct anybody on that.
Okay. How are you?
I'm doing good.
That's a lovely guitar you got there.
It's been around with me a long, long time.
What, you got a new album out, right?
A new album called First Comes the Night.
Yeah.
And somebody told me that it was the first album of all originals that I've done in 5 or 6 years. But I think the one before this I did was...
the Sun one?
Yeah, it was Sun Sessions, a lot of Elvis, Jerry Lee, that kind of stuff.
That was all covers?
I had 1 or 2 that I wrote on that one, but mostly covers. Yeah.
So do you like write? How do you write? You have a process of writing?
Yeah, it's my process of writing is like, I tell people it's like doing a card trick that you can do about 1 out of 200 times. You know, pick a card. No, that's not it. Pick a card. No, that's not it. And every once in a while you get lucky and it works, and you go, "Hey, I'm a songwriter."
Yeah.
You know, songwriting is just like.
Do you find it easy or hard then?
I find it's fun. It's like fishing. You know. You don't catch fish if you don't have a hook in the water.
Mm-hmm.
You don't write songs if you don't pick up your guitar and try.
Yeah.
You know, if people think, I think people who've never written a song, you think, well, I'm not a songwriter. Well, if you get a guitar and you sit there and start trying, you may be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I find tunes and melodies come very easy.
Yeah.
But writing lyrics is a stretch for me. I mean, I could do it, but it's a lot of work. It takes a lot more to make it cool.
Well, you know, you and I would probably be good together because I usually write everything at one time. I write a melody and I write words together, but I'm very fast on words. And I didn't know I was fast on words until I worked with other songwriters, and they go, "Wow, you got a whole verse there."
Yeah.
You know, you got another verse, and I get done quick. To me, always the hard part is the third verse, because the first 2 verses you use all the easy rhymes.
Yeah.
You know, moon, June, now what's left?
Yeah.
You know, you get to the third verse, you got to watch out. You get, weird rhymes.
Loon.
Yeah.
Boom.
I love songs that have rhymes that you haven't heard before. You've heard Moon and June, but Bing Crosby's got one. There's a great big valise full of books to read where it's peaceful. I go, valiceful and peaceful. That's good. Or Dean Martin has a great one that goes, should we take it for espresso? Yeah, I guess so. On an evening in Roma. I go, espresso and guess so.
Yeah.
I go, when a songwriter does stuff like that, I go, I tip my hat, man. That's good.
No, he didn't actually write songs, though, Dean.
No,
did he?
Dean didn't. You're right.
He had songwriters.
And, sometimes when I'm lazy, I envy those guys. I go, Dean Martin was huge. People love him.
Yeah.
And he never had to do anything. He never turned off the TV. It was like, are my songs ready? Okay, I'll go in and sing.
Yeah, no one cares who's listening to him.
That's true.
But I guess on a financial level, you don't make...
I worked with at Warner Brothers, and one of my engineers early on had worked with Dean Martin and Bing Crosby, had recorded those guys, and I used to always, beg him for stories.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what was it like? Because I was, a young singer going in there.
Yeah.
Lee Hirschberg was the engineer. And Lee Hirschberg, that's a name you don't know maybe, but you probably listen to his records because he worked on everything. And Lee was so good. And Lee was he's the nicest guy. And I said, what's Bing Crosby? Tell me about him. He says, Bing Crosby would walk in the studio eating like an ice cream bar, which I went, you're not supposed to eat cold things when you're singing or ice cream. He'd walk in, well, we ready to record? He goes, I got to be out of here. There's a race running at Hialeah. And sing like 3 tracks and go, that's it. Same with Dean Martin. Come in and do like 3 tracks. And I was in there going, take 37. Let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah. What do you think the difference is then about them? Is it a time, an era?
Well, I think those guys had already did their homework when they came in. By that, like they had a long history of playing clubs and singing every night.
Yeah.
They knew the material.
Yeah.
And a lot of the material they were doing also was stuff that was like, classics.
Yeah.
they're doing Pennies from Heaven or something that they kind of go, I know this melody.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that they went, I totally am making this up as I go along.
Yeah. I like Dean Martin's voice.
Who don't?
Well, I'd prefer his voice over Frank Sinatra. I was never a real big fan of Sinatra's voice style, but Dean Martin I liked.
I would say I like Dean's voice over Sinatra's, but the older I get and the more I listen to Sinatra, I just love, you got to love Sinatra. There's something about him that, somebody said it's like he's talking to you. And now now we kind of take it for granted, I think. But you think about before Sinatra, there was do you remember a guy named Vaughn? He did like Racing with the Moon. Racing with the moon on you. It was that kind of singing.
Yeah.
And you go, nobody sings like that anymore. Like, who sings like that?
Yeah.
Well, that was what you had before you had, Sinatra.
So it was more of a new era of singing.
He brought this new kind of relaxed style in.
Right.
And you go, now you kind of take it for granted. You go, well, that's a nice style, but, everybody can do that. And you go, that was cutting edge, man.
Yeah. He wasn't a big fan of rock and roll, though, Sinatra.
By the way, I got to say, it's a real pleasure to be on the show with you, and I'm a fan. And when I started out, I remember my older brother said, there's this band called Sex Pistols, and I said, that's a terrible name.
Yeah. That's what I thought when I first heard it.
I go, that's offensive. They're never going to get played on the radio. Then I heard the music, and I went, that's really never going to get played. And my brother was living in
And you're right, it never does.
My brother was living in L.A., and he said, this changes everything. And I listened to it, and I thought, well, I don't sound like Sex Pistols. I don't, I'm not punk and stuff. But I listened to it, and I go, and I loved it because it was the first music that I heard in a long time where I went, these guys are just, it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And the music that I was listening to was like early.
What was you listening to?
I was like Sun Sessions out of, Memphis, and all the stuff Sam Phillips was producing, and early Elvis. And that stuff was all, it was like 2 or 3 chords banged on a box. And I went, but there's a common ground I felt like in the idea of like energy and fun and to hell with this. And I didn't feel like anybody in the Sex Pistols was thinking, this is going to win us an award.
No, we weren't looking for singles.
Yeah.
Hit singles.
And I loved it. It was very freeing to hear that music. So
it had good rock and roll spirit to it.
Totally.
Yeah,
it was inspirational to me. It's like I listened to that stuff and I went, well, you can play stuff with energy for fun and damn everything else.
Yeah.
The cool thing about all the early rock and roll, the stuff that I liked is I don't think any of those people, there was no Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at the time.
Right.
And if you listen to any of like Elvis or the early artists and they talk about it, they go, oh yeah, I'll probably be back driving a truck in a couple weeks.
Right.
But and they thought, well, we're having fun, but in 3 weeks this may be over.
Right.
And I think that's the right attitude to take.
Yeah.
Of course, I say that because I never won anything. So never.
Well, I got to admire bands now who start, wanting to get into music because you're not making any money from it.
Yeah.
That whole business is over. So any kids who are making music now, they obviously know they're doing it because they love playing it.
It isn't the idea
driven.
that you're going to be money driven. You're going to make I guess there's a few Justin Biebers out there.
Yeah.
But it's a very few.
But even them, I mean, how many records do they sell? Like, it's all about meet and greets and merch.
Yeah. It's a different model of how they do the business. But I'm sure there's a few people who make a ton of money and they've got a jet and an assistant with an accent.
Sure.
But the rest of us, I'll see you at Safeway.
Yeah.
That's where, it's funny because you think of rock, I used to think rock and roll stars, they're in a separate world.
Fell from the start, from the skies, yeah.
But it's like, where I went to, I think I was going to Costco or something. I was going to go shopping for something, and I somehow was talking to Paul Stanley from Kiss, and he knew Costco. I mean, Paul's probably got it. I'm sure he could buy a small country in Europe, but Paul knows Costco like the back of your hand, and he's such a down-to-earth guy.
Yeah,
he's fantastic, and he goes, your best luggage is your best luggage buys are at Costco, Chris. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I'll do it.
That's good. I see him up at the deli near where I live, and Gino, baby. I see him up there too.
It's funny because I've bumped into people like certain delis in the morning. I walked in, I go, oh, there's like Paul Stan, or there's Brian Wilson, and I've seen more people there than I see on a rock show.
Yeah.
And they're all just getting the sandwiches and stuff.
Yeah. It's a myth, a lot of it, that people are driving around in limousines all day.
Yeah. But I love it when I do. There are certain, when I actually see people who, the private jet pulls up and their assistant gets their bag, I go, wow, it's like seeing a pirate with a real parrot on their shoulder. You go like, wow, just like the cartoon. You know what I mean? Well, Stevie Nicks actually, in some ways, I love Stevie because she's about as down to earth as you can get. Really sweet woman, really laid back, and she doesn't have a lot of attitude or anything. But then there's other times when I see her and I go, wow, the last of like that's a real rock star. She's got the private jet pulls up, somebody gets the bag, and Stevie steps on or out.
Would you like that?
For a week? Could I have it for a week? I think it'd be fun for a little while, but I like driving. Like I drive my car any place.
Me too.
I'm old school. I like to have my car. It's like freedom.
Yeah, I'm not a big flying fan.
No,
not at all.
I used to fly down to L.A. from San Francisco. I'm in San Francisco mostly, but then after 9/11, I was driving all the time.
Yeah,
and I got a '64 Chevy Nova, and I put so many miles on that car driving back and forth to L.A. And eventually, but it was a great. Now it's I think it's in the Peterson Auto Museum's got it, but it had so many miles on it. But it was such a great car because they're kind of big and boxy, and you could put like 15 guitars and 4 amps in that car.
It never broke down?
I had one breakdown. I think one time I had to put a new oil filter on it, and that was about it. But that car's, and the thing about Chevy Nova is, you take that car to, like if you have some kind of fancy car, you got a Tesla, you got to take it to Tesla.
Yeah.
You got a Chevy Nova, you could take it to anybody.
Costco.
Yeah, or you just pull up to anybody who's Mexican can fix it.
Yeah. Where? So what do you drive?
No, Mexicans love Chevy Novas. That's a fact. The most hilarious thing, I'm sitting in front of my house in San Francisco washing my car. This Mexican guy, kind of lowrider pulls up. He's looking at it. He keeps looking at my car, and I go, "So you got a Chevy Nova?" I go, "You collect Chevy Novas?" And he goes, "No, just the tires."
Do you must have like an SUV or something though?
I've got a Tesla.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
You got the big one?
No, not the big one. No.
How many miles can you get out of it before you have to charge it?
I can get all the way to, I can get about 250, something like that.
So you don't drive that down from...
I do. I've driven it to L.A.
So would you stop, pull over, and charge it?
I only had to, I had to stop my regular car to fill up with gas. I stop at the same gas station, and it takes me about 15 minutes or something like that. And
for a full charge?
Yeah, I can get up, enough of a charge to get the way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not bad at all. I love that it's made in California. Anything that'll give us a job, I'm happy for.
Are you from Stockton?
I am from Stockton.
The Big Valley.
The Big Valley. There's a Shadows song called "Stars Fell on Stockton," and when I was a kid, I heard that and I thought,
that's about me.
I thought somebody wrote about my town.
Yeah.
Because we were like nowhere. And then later on, somebody goes, "No, stupid. There's a Stockton in England," which I've never.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a Stockton.
Thanks for telling me.
No, there's a Stockton over there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I used to. I like watching that show at the Big Valley.
Yeah.
You know that?
Oh yeah. Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I knew about Stockton.
That's the history of my town. Yeah, I remember seeing that show. We were anything that had anything to do where they said the name of my town. We were a small enough town that it was like a big deal.
Yeah.
You know.
So are you the big deal from Stockton?
Nah, we got a couple of we got some ball players I think that came out of Stockton. But yeah, I'm kind of like in my town. I'm kind of known. People,
if you drive around with your Nova?
If I drive around in Stockton, I go out. I go to Stockton quite a bit because my mom's still there, my brother's there.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to Stockton, and people know who I am.
Yeah.
So I comb my hair, and I'm polite. But you got to be polite in Stockton anyway, or you're going to end up dead.
Yeah, someone to kick your ass, right?
Yeah, big time. When I took my drummer, Kenny Johnson's my drummer, same guy 30 years. And he's a big Texas guy. He's a big Texan. He looks rough. I mean, if you look at Kenny, people don't want to mess with him. He's like, a big, got like dark eyes, and people always say, man, that guy, he looks mean. And we get to Stockton, and I said, listen, when we're in Stockton, I said, just note to yourself, people here kind of take it serious. There's not a lot of joking around.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I'm thinking, well, he's covered. He's from a Texas town. We get in, we pull into the gas station, and I'm trying to edit this for radio, but like the first guy, he's got his window open. It's summertime. We pull into the gas station. The guy looks over at him. Kenny kind of glances in his direction, and the guy goes, "What the F are you looking at?"
Yeah. Nice.
And Kenny looks and starts walking towards the car, and Kenny goes, "Drive." It's like... I said, and I did, and I said, "Welcome to Stockton."
Wow.
Well,
let's play some music. Do
Sure.
you want to hear Monster Mash?
And on the way over here, I said, I was hoping, because usually they only play
hope he gets the Monster Mash.
You know something? And it's weird, like you read my mind, because I go, it's only on Halloween that they play this, and I go, Bobby Boris Pickett. I don't care which one you want to play. Any Bobby Boris Pickett tune would do. But Monster Mash would be great.
Yeah, Jonesy's Jukebox.
It was a smash.
A graveyard smash. Jonesy's Jukebox, KLOS, Chris Isaak, Monster Mash.